the prayer. I was dying to lead the prayer. And he would come in, who's going to conclude? And I'd say, me. And it was like, oh, very cute, but not you. You know, very cute, but not you. You're not going to get to do it. Now, I read the thing without chanting on a Friday night when my brother was bat mitzvahed.
What?
Bar mitzvahed, I'm sorry. When Stephen was bar mitzvahed, he chanted the whole Musaf service. Because he's a boy. And it was always a joke where it was sort of like, right, because he's a boy, you know, but, you know, that it counts, but it doesn't count. But I did grow up in that. I did not grow up in like something like what Donna's daughter has grown up in. And all the girls today, you know, they were wearing talis, you know, at their bat mitzvahs, and you know, I mean, it's the same. So maybe that is a piece of it. Maybe that is a piece of it. But that's why it's so crazy when I come out and I talk about this book, which is basically a funny book with all of these themes percolating underneath. It depends. You could speak to different people on different levels. And when I was at Jewish Book Council and I had these cities coming up to me and saying, you cannot say the word Shiksa in our community, it's pejorative, you can't come. You did a wonderful presentation, you're not going to be able to come, we won't invite you. The worst program we ever had was Wendy Wasserstein doing Shiksa Goddess. And her book, Shiksa Goddess, is called Shiksa Goddess, or How I Spent My 40s. It's a series of short stories, and it's just, you know, that in New York, like now it's all coffee's a whole business, but remember years ago in the diners they had the Greek coffee cups? Yeah. And it's a Greek coffee cup thing, and it's not about that at all. So that was her worst program. Another city said, this is too threatening for me, you know, this is too threatening. And I said to her in 2008, so I kind of think, like, wouldn't it be so much better to talk about it, you know? Yes?
Do you have controversy here?
Do I have controverscy here?
Yeah.
You mean in this room?
In this temple.
Yes.
Oh, was there? I don't know.
Yes.
What?
There was a little bit of controversy here from a couple ends. The first end was an older generation. I guess the word, it's funny because to me, when this event was brought to my attention, and when Terry and I talked about it, Shiksa to me, as a 25-year-old woman, is not pejorative at all. It's funny, it's, you know, it is what it is. It's just a non-Jewish girl. And, you know, some of our older staff members did not look at it the same way, and immediately saw it as offensive. And then we had a congregate, you know, people in the congregation who saw it as offensive to, one woman saw it as offensive to her as a non-Jewish woman. So, yes.
As a non-Jewish woman, I think that it's, but she didn't read the book, so right, she doesn't even know.
That's honestly based on the cover.
On the cover. And, yeah, you know, it's crazy. I thought I was going to write an interfaith thing, which I didn't. I called the JCC in my neighborhood on the Upper West Side, and I wanted to sit in on an interfaith class, and I got a message back from this female rabbi who taught it and said, A, I don't want anybody sitting in, B, you know, I will never support any book with that title, The Shiksa Syndrome. And I remember I talked to you about this, and I thought, okay, let's be realistic. Who's in her class? Who's in her interfaith class? Tons of Gentile men who are becoming Jewish? I don't think so. Okay, who's in her class? Non-Jewish women who are there. You know, and you know, my friend Jamie thinks that this is actually a very a feminist book. She feels there's a big feminist piece of this, because I met this morning with the agents who are trying to sell this for movie, and having a hard time because this is too Jewish. Now, my big fat Greek wedding is not too Greek, okay? And you know, everybody wants to be Italian, where that movie just came out where they pretend to be Italian or not to be Italian. I mean, I read that, I couldn't believe it. It's like the same thing. That's not, and that's not too Italian. And Angela's Ashes, you know, and Roots, nobody, all these things, you know, things take place in India, it's all, but Jewish suddenly becomes too Jewish.
Because all the producers are Jewish.
Exactly right. And a lot of them, I mean, there are women, but a lot of them are men. And my personal feeling here, it's just my feeling, and I have said this at my book things, actually. I think I'm starting to, like, lose my mind what I said where, is that a lot of the men who would produce this film are exactly these men who are with this thing. And you see, usually, all of these things, the man is sort of always portrayed, the Jewish man, as like nebbish. Look at Charles Grodin in that, and Larry David, you know, his character, and they're always losing. And then the wife, the Shiksa wife, is nice, never loses her temper. You know, it's that very sweet, and she's the trophy girl. And this reverses it, and this is like the Jewish woman saying, "Oh, okay, I'm going to beat you at your own game," and I don't think it sits well. If they even read the book, I don't know. I mean, who knows? But it's yes.
Two things.
Yes.
To respond to something that Donnie said about maybe it's that you didn't matter, as I think women in general didn't matter. I don't think it's a Jewish woman, an Italian woman, a Catholic woman. You know, all men, no matter what the ethnicity, got the vote before we did, and look who just got elected. So I do think that there is that. Now, I have a daughter who's 27, growing up in Los Angeles. We had an interfaith marriage. Her last name is Duffy. She was very involved at the temple here, her choice, because, and I gave her that choice. She wanted to learn the language of her people, was what she said to me when she was like, I guess 8, when she wanted to come to Hebrew school, but then we changed it to religious school. And from her vantage point, and we joke about this all the time, I think there is a very different thing happening now that we joke about, the wannabe Jews. You know, I don't feel it's that anymore at all.
Well, that's nice.
You know, and I don't even know that it's all that generational. I used to think that it was generational. I'm not so sure it is.
I mean, you're saying now people want to be Jewish?
Yes.
Oh,
I think it's kind of popular now.
And it's not
I don't
just
even think I could have sold this book at another
It's
time.
not just here. Her
I think
last,
it's more popular, whatever problems, sure.
her last boyfriend lives in London, and we always joke that he was a wannabe Jew. You know, he was in the financial industry, so maybe he had more push to do that. You know.
Yeah, I think
So I
that
think things are definitely, and it amuses me because I grew up in an area where there were very few Jews.
Where?
Outside of Boston. And my first writing lesson, when I came home from school with my first writing lesson that said, Jesus loves me, my mother just went berserk. And I was all embarrassed because she went down to complain.
That was public school?
Was this on in the southern suburbs where it's all Irish?
Well, yeah, it was heavily Irish.
Randolph or one of those places?
No, now it's very Jewish. But when we moved there, it wasn't. You know, so I mean, things change. So, but I grew up passing, as I used to say, I passed for.
Well, when you said it was an interfaith marriage, I was going to ask you who was
Which
who.
side?
Yeah,
I know.
I didn't know.
I have most of my life passed, and with the name Duffy now, you know, and Duffy, and I just say Boston. They go, oh, you know, the assumptions are what they are. You know, but I used to feel very self-conscious about being Jewish, and my daughter, you know, it's just totally cool, and always has been.
Yeah, she's in L.A. also.
Yeah, she's in L.A. And when I went to New York, because I went to school in New York, you were talking about everybody's Jewish in New York.
Well, everybody's Jewish in New York. That's why I actually,
oh, totally.
I actually, to say with my cousin, I got much more involved after I lived in L.A. because when I lived out here, I felt very uncomfortable. I didn't feel comfortable at the synagogues that I went to at that time, whatever ones they were, and I just didn't feel comfortable. And when I went home, when I moved back, which was 92, these people in my building, you know, then I never paid attention to it, I think, to a certain extent, because it was all around me, so I didn't have to. And then when I was here, even though I was living in Studio City, and you know, it was just different. Like I would be online at Thrifty drugstore that is no more, and you know, it'd catch somebody's eye, and it was. And that doesn't sound like a Jewish thing, but I just felt so fish out of water, and I started to really miss it when I lived here. So when I went back, a lot of stuff I've learned in since I'm